Hi, Editing Day EJ here with a quick disclaimer for the video that you are about to watch. When we got back, we noticed that the storage cards on one of the cameras had become corrupted. And this was the camera that normally captures my side of the table. And so we only have perspective on Dario. As a result, the interview is going to seem a little bit more like an interrogation than it normally would, and I apologize for that. But it was really important for me to upload some video for this, simply because Dario has some really interesting things to say about his music as well as the patronage model. So I hope you managed to enjoy it nevertheless, and I also want to say thank you so much for watching. This is A Line Around Your Thoughts, a podcast that centers on conversations with artists, writers, musicians, and creatives from around the Inland Northwest. I'm your host, EJ Iannelli. We are joined in the Roquehart Media Studio today by the musician and visual artist, Dario Ré. So welcome, Dario.
Thank you, EJ. Happy to be here.
I am glad you're here too. It's been quite a while since we've been able to kind of reconnect, and you always seem to have a lot going on. In fact, I have never known you not to be busy. Since the time we first came into contact, you have always had a project, whether that's HeatSpeak, whether that's as a solo musician, whether as a visual artist. You're always busy. You're always doing something, and so that presents me with a problem, because as I was thinking, okay, how do we get into this interview? Where do we begin? And there's such a long and full timeline, it's kind of hard to say, oh, that's a good entry point. So I traced it back to kind of November, beginning of November, when you had Paradigm of a Setting Sun, and that was your most recent single. And then there was a string of singles and other things since then. So so if we could start there with Paradigm of a Setting Sun that was released in November. And just talk about that single and where this fits into the Dario Ré oeuvre.
Yeah, cool. That's a great question. Good starting point. It fits in to the collection of work mostly as like my home studio has become a huge creative space for me. Mm-hmm. So as more of like a studio in the act of actually making art. So previous to this, I've done a lot of studio work elsewhere and had other collaborators. Our big album, Debut K.O.K. with HeatSpeak, that was at the library. So having other engineers come in and help has been a big part of the journey. And now it's like I've doubled down in the studio as a creative tool. Mm-hmm. And so that's where Dario Ré, that stream of production is really helpful for me, because it allows me to be more experimental and sort of try a lot of my own sounds that don't bring in all my collaborators all the time.
Yeah, HeatSpeak is quite a large ensemble, and you're juggling, even though I think you remain the primary songwriter for HeatSpeak. I know others have made contributions as well, and that's quite a large ensemble, and you're juggling personalities and you're juggling talents, where if you just get that creative spark and you want to sit down at the piano and crank out a song, it sounds like, your Sandpoint home studio can do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so this string of singles that I put out this winter are kind of in the name of like letting that breathe a little bit. So projects that I've been tinkering with at home, it's like giving them some space, both for themselves so that they have a life of their own, but also to kind of free me up. Because sometimes sitting on a project that's unfinished can feel a little heavy. Mm-hmm. And so it was really nice to just share some of the things that I've been working on that didn't really have an avenue built into themselves, and that's where Dario Ré is like, cool, you can handle anything.
Yeah, it gives you that platform or that space for experimentation. And I have noticed that the Dario Ré work that I've been hearing of late tends to be kind of synth heavy. You're experimenting with a lot of electronics and things like that. So maybe synth isn't the actual instrument, but there seems to be more of an electronic influence in that, where I think Train, which was a single that you released in mid-December. So starting with Paradigm of a Setting Sun back in early November, and then Train. Both of these were kind of sonically exploratory. Train was certainly something that you wanted to listen to with headphones. Mm-hmm. Is the work that you're producing now under the Dario Ré moniker, is that the stuff that doesn't necessarily incorporate the same instrumentation as HeatSpeak?
That's where it's headed for sure. Mm-hmm. I think prior to the last couple of years, it was just an avenue for my sort of like overload of creativity, where it's like you said, managing a lot of band members, there's only so much we can get done. A lot of them have full-time jobs, and this is their secondary project, right? And so before, I was utilizing some of the same instrumentation for Dario Ré, and it was oftentimes kind of confusing. It's like, well, why is this Dario Ré? This is HeatSpeak. And sometimes I had a hard time answering that question for myself. But you're totally right in that I am experimenting with a lot of electronics. And so that's just naturally ending up in my creativity. It's not so much of a branding at this point. It's more like that is where my headspace is, and those are the instruments I'm playing. And so like they're becoming part of the sound.
Yeah, and that differentiation, because I share that, where I didn't know necessarily where Dario Ré ended and HeatSpeak began, and vice versa. And there was a lot of overlap because you're an extremely eclectic musician, and there's no instrument that's kind of off limits for you. and this is great, and this is what I find so encouraging and rewarding about your music, is that there is this tendency to explore. But it's certainly of late that I've noticed that HeatSpeak and Dario Ré tend to diverge a little bit. And I guess you mentioned Des Bouquets OK, and that was from early 2024. And is that the most recent HeatSpeak album? Mm-hmm. Okay. Have you been doing work with them outside of that? Are we gearing up towards another HeatSpeak album?
I think so. Mm-hmm. It's been one of these piecemeal albums. So it's not really formulated yet, so I wouldn't have any sort of like release trajectory for you. We do have a big show coming up, which is exciting.
And when is that?
It's March 28th.
Okay.
Hamilton Studios.
Okay, cool.
So that'll be full band, listening room. We sold out that space last year, and it's just a beautiful listening room. I love playing that space.
Yeah.
So, we are definitely working together in that format. The recording process has been more piecemeal. So it's like we have all these tracks that haven't made it onto other albums. And over the years, they've really stacked up. So I've been playing with sort of almost kind of a B-side concept.
Yeah.
Where it's like, where do all these songs that we play live that I love, but they didn't, for whatever reason, make it into the curation of an album prior? Like, where do these land? And there's enough of them now that I can pull an album out of it if I want. But it's kind of a different way to approach it.
That's kind of a nice feeling, though, to have that much material. And I know from B-side compilations, I think of Catherine Wheel's Like Cats and Dogs being one of my favorite albums, where it's a collection of B-sides, but it's as strong as anything they ever put out. And that could be said of a lot of artists. So B-side doesn't necessarily mean, or didn't make it to the album cut, doesn't necessarily mean that it's second tier. It could be, maybe it didn't fit the mood or the vibe that you were going for on that particular album.
Yeah, that's right on. And I don't really like the concept of B-side as like philosophically, because I do think there's some qualification to your creativity, which in my goal is to get out of the way of that.
Yeah.
And just create. So it wouldn't be a B-side. So I'm telling you that, but I wouldn't be like, here's a B-side album. I would have to like commit to it being a finished product as good as anything.
Right.
But structurally, it doesn't have that like, here's a collection of songs that we've been working on for the last 6 months, and here it is completed. This is like spanning many, many years, many collaborators, and they're just songs I love. So it's like, well, where do they land?
Yeah, and B-side as a label is helpful for understanding where these songs fit in, but maybe not necessarily as where the songs rank. Yeah. And so even talking about this right now, it's easy for me to get ahead of myself, because we've already kind of drifted into the distinction between HeatSpeak and Dario Ré, but there were other albums or other singles that were mixed into all this, and albums. I'm thinking of Oaxaca, which is something that came together relatively quickly, very, very recently. So I think you were inspired and recorded it over just a matter of weeks after a November trip to Mexico. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So here you are releasing these singles, and then you squeeze a full album into there as well. And again, when we talk about exploratory, this was very much, this was kind of soundscapes and experimental sound, and then kind of poetic musings and spoken word. So there was a lot in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that project to me feels more like an artwork in a lot of ways. So it is utilizing sound and some of my production skills, and it's allowed me to really pivot into this new realm that feels like more like an artistic object of like, here, take this in and get a glimpse of sort of how my observation of Oaxaca has come to be.
And talk to me about that that experience in that you had while traveling, and why you felt compelled to translate that so quickly into an album. You know, what were the individual experiences that you had there? One of them was Dia de los Muertos, I think, and so you were there at that time, and so was that something that played into it, and then just left you with this kind of font of creative inspiration that translated into an album.
Yeah, that's a good way to think of it for sure. Is just like an overwhelming amount of inspiration. And as you kind of alluded to earlier, I do stay busy with my creative work. And so at home, that's really easy, right? I have all my tools available all the time. And traveling, I don't. And that can be a little hard for me at times to just be, consuming the world and having not a lot of outlets for it. And so the outlets I did have were a field recorder and my notebook. That's all I had. And so I wrote a lot of poetry and I recorded a lot of field work. The things that caught my interest, I would just turn on my recorder, and with no intention for anything. It was just like, here's something I can create while I'm traveling. And it just turned out to be poetry and field recordings. And so a lot of the poems I was reading to people I was meeting along the way, I was sharing them with my fellow travelers, and they were turning out really beautifully, and I loved them. And they were very kind of like, I would usually sit down and finish it in one sitting. Sometimes the next day I'd revisit it and do some edits, but they were all coming together really quickly. So there was this pace along the way that was consistent. And then when I got home, I was like, well, this is work that deserves to be shared. Like it has a life of its own beyond me, Some of these poems are not reflections of my own. They were like bigger than that. And so I thought, well, do I just email them to friends that I love, or like, what do I do with this? And I'm someone who likes a tangible thing,
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, maybe I do like a little zine. But then it was like, well, wait, I have all these field recordings that are really fun. So it just kind of was one of these like perfect sparks of inspiration that I knew I would never like dive back into.
Yeah.
I didn't have like enough, oomph to carry through all my other musical pursuits now that I'm home.
Yeah.
And so it was like a now or never. I want this to imbue the energy that I feel. It needs to be quick. And so I didn't overthink it. I decided to speak the poetry, because that's how I was sharing it when I was traveling. And when I was reading it, it was all chicken scratch in my notebook. But I would sit down and read it to somebody. So I thought, well, let's read it to the people that are home. And so I started to, produce the poems as a spoken word, and then intersperse the field recordings to kind of build a little journey of its own.
Yeah, and I think, like you alluded to, the longer something like that sits, it needs that urgency. That's part of what defines a work like that. And so the longer it sits, the more you could just end up shelving it for good. And and so when you have something like that does seem urgent and that does seem fresh, it fits in well with that rapid creation and rapid release. Now, with your home studio, that has a name, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, what is the name of the home studio?
Hollyhock Homestead.
And that's different to your home studio that you had, because you moved to Sandpoint, is it 2022?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, you used to live right here in the Emerson Garfield neighborhood, and by Corbin Park, and you had a home studio there as well, if I'm not mistaken, right? Did that have the same name, or has it changed?
Mystic Homestead was the one in Corbin Park.
Okay. So Mystic Homestead and now Hollyhock.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, why the name change? Why didn't the Mystic Homestead migrate with you?
It just seemed like such a fresh start. So my home in Corbin Park was next door to the home I grew up in and was born in.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
oh,
and my
wow.
mom still lives in. So I bought the home next door to my childhood home, and we sort of combined the yards and created our homestead. So I took down the fences, and we combine both properties.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was like a very collaborative, project with my mom in that space. And so it felt like with Sandpoint, it felt like I would be kind of, I don't know, bringing something that wasn't actually coming with us
I
to
see.
just keep the same name. And so the homesteading is just part of our lifestyle. So it's like whether we're in the urban homestead or now on 10 acres, like that's just who we are. So there's a lot of hollyhocks on our property. It's like surrounded by, I love the alliteration. And,
Well, there we go. Yeah, that,
Yep.
that explains the name.
yeah.
But it seems like it would be a little difficult to maintain an active studio and functional studio because you're entirely off grid. So how are you powering this studio? That's my practical concern for the day.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
power is something I think about all the time. Solar primarily.
Okay.
And then like this time of year, if we get like big droughts of sun, then we have a backup generator to charge the battery bank.
Okay.
So we've got a big battery bank that will last several days with a full charge. So as long as we're getting some sun, either like diffuse sun every day or like a sunny day every 3 or 4 days, which in spring and summer and most of fall, that's the case, then it's just fully solar. But then when it's snowy and dark, we can fire up the generator and charge the batteries.
Okay. And maybe that ties into paradigm of a setting sun and your ruminations on sunlight in that song because it's so crucial to everything that you do.
Yeah, it is so key. We spend so much time at the kitchen table like, oh, some diffused sun like coming through the clouds. Like we'll look over at our little trimectric and oh yeah, look, we're getting a charge. It's like power is definitely on my mind all the time.
Yeah, well, probably from a practical concern, and then also from a larger socio-political view as well. It's kind of hard to avoid that. But yeah, so there was Paradigm of a Setting Sun. Then Oaxaca followed, if I'm not mistaken, and then that was then followed by Train, which was a Dario Ré single that was very piano-driven, but also had these electronic elements as well. And then there was December. And I think is that Phil Pinter who performed on that, or was that you?
Yep. Yeah, he played all the piano on that.
I see. And so that came out as a Heat Speak release. So this is a single that was released contemporaneously with Train, but it was billed as a Heat Speak. I guess because it was Phil who was performing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. In that moment, that was the easy distinction, right? So Dario Ré is usually at the most maybe 70% me performing, and I'll bring in some collaborators. But for this, even though it wasn't like a fully arranged sort of like orchestral song that a lot of Heat Speaks are, it's a piano solo. It was Phil who did the performing, so it felt like, well, that's him and I are at the end of the. If I boil it all down, are probably the creative muse of that whole project.
Right.
So it's like, oh, that makes sense to just be in that world, even though it is a solo piano piece.
Yeah. And with Heat Speak, the instrumentation, eclectic has already come up. You've got violin most notably. So there's guitar, there's bass, there's drums, which is kind of maybe standard rock or pop instrumentation or folk instrumentation. And then you've got violin as well that's introduced into this. Talk to me about that sonic palette that Heat Speak offers and some of the things that that it allows you to do musically, because it seems to me as your songwriting has matured and your own compositional skills have expanded, you dabbled in more genres and then kind of subsumed them into Heat Speak. So yeah, talk about Heat Speak as a band, as an outfit, and how that's kind of evolving.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say maybe if I start back at the beginning of it, it is sort of Phil and I's initial spark.
Which is what, 2019? Is that the origins of Heat Speak, or was it even earlier than that?
Yeah, I consider it 2014.
Oh, 2014. Okay.
As like the project evolving as to what it then became. 2017 was our first album release.
Okay, and that was To Love Wind?
No, that was Aspen Artichoke.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware that. I thought Aspen Artichoke was under your name. And
it is, yeah. So you're right in thinking that.
Okay, and here we get into the tricky distinctions. Okay,
Exactly.
okay. And then To Love Wind was 2017?
2019.
2019. Okay, that's maybe where I got my chronology mixed up.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so 2017, if I can just step into that little, history for a moment, it's like,
By all means, yeah.
yeah, it's like I came to the concept of recording an album with a bunch of original material and didn't know anything about recording. His first album, didn't know anything, did a Kickstarter and just brought in some collaborators. So Phil being the first one that kind of sparked that interest. It was like my totally self-taught composition, songwriting being with his like classically trained being. So that like pairing created this really unusual sound that right away we were both like, whoa, this is interesting. And so that's when, let's record this. Let's make these songs, something that we can live on. So then we started collecting musicians around us. So Aspen Artichoke was Dario Ré as just the main songwriter. And then it wasn't until we released that and had such success with it that I was like, who wants to be in a band?
Raise your hand if you want to be in a band. Yeah.
And about half the collaborators on that album were like, yeah, I'd like to. And then we started to shift towards Heat Speak. And it felt like, well, this is bigger than me. Let's give it its, a world of its own to live in.
Right.
So that's where, but if I like sonically, collaboratively, like any lens I look at, Aspen Artichoke is Heat Speak.
I see.
It just didn't exist when that moment was was there.
And Aspen Artichoke has been re-released a couple times, if I'm not mistaken, no?
Kind of like subtly.
Okay.
Yeah, we sold out of the initial press.
Well, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah. And like I wanted more merch. And so I did print, I think it was 100, no, it was 300 re-releases of Aspen Artichoke with Heat Speak as the artist.
Okay.
So those are like floating around. And I've since like returned to like, no, it was Dario Ré, let's just own it. But there are like 300 Aspen Artichokes by Heat Speak floating around in the world. So that was a re-release, but it wasn't like I was kind of like unsure about the whole concept.
Okay.
So it was like here, like you need to buy this album because it's on our merch table, but now it's under Heat Speak, and that was kind of a secret.
And just for folks who have not heard Heat Speak and just kind of want some touchstones. Now I think cited Andrew Bird as somebody that whose music you enjoy. I just out of sheer instrumentation, I make Kemper Van Beethoven associations. What are some other sonic touchstones, like the recommended if you like type stuff?
I don't know if it like checks out sonically. When I hear music, I'm thinking about how it feels.
Right.
And so sometimes that can really shift genre. And to me, it feels exactly cohesive. And to other people are like, what? Patrick Watson comes to mind. He's somebody that every time I hear his stuff, I just like feel a kinship. And I also love it. But I feel like there's some overlap there with kind of the way that we allow songs to breathe. So that would be a good, if you like, then, seek out. That's the first one that comes to mind.
Okay.
Yeah, if I get another one, I'll send it through.
And has the core group of musicians largely remained the same throughout, or have you had some folks move away, for example, and then come back?
I'd say both and. Michael, who plays bass, and Phil, who plays violin primarily. Those two are from the start. So when I think of like core and I really strip it down, I think us three are probably that core. And then there are some pretty darn core members like Zach Zuniga, who plays percussion. I don't think he's ever missed a show. It's like if I call him and say there's a show, he's there, So like from a commitment level, very core. And the nature of, percussion is that it can be a little modular and it's fine.
Yeah.
So like Terry will sometimes play percussion, and it's totally fine. Versus like Michael and Phil, like if I'm replacing one of them for a show, it's like a noticeable shift in our sound. And then beyond that, it's been a little more modular, but we have people kind of come and go, both like over the span of time. And then there's like people I pull from, like, oh, this stage is big and we have the opportunity let's bring in more folk just for the fun of it. And so there's a lot of people kind of on the periphery who know the material and are ready to rock. And I can kind of call upon them if it makes sense.
And are you able to record then at Hollyhock, or do you have to move out and go into different spaces in order to record with HeatSpeak in particular?
We can do like more of a modular setup at home. So I have never tried like a full band take with HeatSpeak at home. I have done that producing for other people.
I see. So you pretty much track individual musicians or maybe pairs of musicians.
Yep.
Okay.
At home, that's my main strategy. I like the pair. If in a band setting, I like the two musicians. I have a good separation for two spaces, like a sliding door between my studio that I can easily separate. And it's like glass. So having two folk record at the same time is ideal.
Yeah,
you can get that playability, but also like a clean sound.
Okay.
But the sort of nuts and bolts of it is usually it's one at a time because of how people's schedules work out and such.
And I realized too that there are, I picked early November as my starting point, but there were singles throughout 2025 that you were releasing, I believe as Dario Ré. I don't know if HeatSpeak factored into that, but there was Chowder Dream, and then Last Winter. I think Last Winter might have been a HeatSpeak tune, if I'm not mistaken, but both of those were released in 2025. So what was this single strategy? Was this just, I've got the inspiration for a single song. I don't want to feel pressured to put out an entire album, but it's ready. Here you go. Is that kind of the thinking behind it?
Yeah, I think that's more or less accurate. Also, the sort of sonic element of it, especially Chowder Dream. It's like that's probably the biggest departure of like genre from everything else I've produced and released. And so it just made sense for it to be a single. Last Winter, I think had I been in album mode, would have easily fit and may still be absorbed into an album in the future.
Oh, okay.
Like I could totally see that happening.
The Christmas album.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. A little Christmas EP. That's been in the back of my mind for sure.
Has it been? Because, the singles that you released on the 19th came with the preface like, hey, this is kind of seasonal. I mean, December, obviously, just in title alone was seasonal. And Train, I think you tied it into the fact that this is a toy or an object that's associated with seasonality. We think of the Christmas train like the Polar Express. And so both of those kind of played to your soft spot for Christmas. Is there enough material to kind of put out a Christmas album at some point?
For sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely something I've always thought about. I mean, partially because you're right. I do love Christmas. That whole like feel is just really sweet to me. And from a creative standpoint, I love to kind of like bend the rules. So I have released other holiday singles in the past, and they're always kind of like fringy, not really holiday. Like maybe they have a jingle bell in them, but they're like anti-religion or like, speak about the hardships of the holiday season. So there's this way that I like to engage with the holiday spirit creatively, but I don't quite let myself all the way just like make a Christmas tune.
They are the diehard of Christmas songs. There's Christmas is a peg on which you can hang it, but it's not not necessarily in that traditional Christmas vein.
Yeah. Although December dabbles.
Yeah,
December to me really feels like Christmas, and that's why I was like, oh, let's do it.
And as you start experimenting, are we going to see more electronic, kind of electronic folk infiltrate HeatSpeak to some extent, but also in your music? What direction are we headed in?
We're definitely headed towards electronic music for sure.
And what about it fascinates you? Because you are, I think, someone who appreciates the value of the organic. And so when you have electronic music, just by virtue of being digital, it loses some of that, because it's ones and zeros. So what about it appeals to you, and why do you find it of value as a mode of creative expression?
That's a multifaceted answer. That's a great question.
I'm prepared for a multifaceted answer.
Cool.
Yeah.
I would say initially, my gut response is dance. So movement and how music can affect our bodies in that setting. So it really stemmed from a collaboration that I started 2 years ago now with Adrienne. She's a friend of mine who's a beautiful singer. We used to do Curtain together, and she kind of like took a break from music for many years and reached out to me to start a project. And I was like, I don't have time for a project. Like, I have all kinds of stuff going. Like, do you want to come into one of my projects? Or, you know what I mean? Just like starting a new one seems ridiculous. But I really wanted to work with her. And so I thought, okay, do I have room for a project? And in my mind, it was the only room I have would be a dance project.
Oh, okay.
Because I love dancing. I love being in spaces with dancers. And the thought of like facilitating that for my community was really exciting. Like, bring my creativity and musical abilities to a dance setting is just like really intriguing to me. I hadn't done it, hadn't even dabbled, but I told her, I'm like, I would do it if it was a dance project, knowing that I had no idea what I was doing. But she's like, great, whatever you want, I'm in. And so I just tried it out. I'm like, I'm just going to write a dance track. You can sing on it and we'll just see how it feels. And so I just tried it, and it was super fun and I loved it.
Yeah.
So that's probably that's where it all stemmed from, is like, wanting to facilitate a dance experience for my community. As opposed to Heat Speak, which is almost on the other spectrum. It's almost just like, I want you to melt into your seat.
Yeah, but I find some of the Heat Speak tracks, eminently danceable. I think, folk in particular, and I don't want to confine it to folk because it's broader than that, but that's one of the most immediate touchstones. But I think of, just feeling that rhythm and getting going. I think Heat Speak is really effective at that. So I wonder if, the digital has more, has a almost purely dance quality, and that's why, there's this dance association, because I find folk can be just as effective at encouraging that physical movement and really getting you moving.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely right. Like, some of the bands I really love are a crossover of like acoustic instruments, but danceable. I think like, I don't know, maybe Arcade Fire, although they are using a lot of electronics these days.
Yeah.
But there are definitely acts in that context that I do love.
Yeah.
And we've had shows, and I because Heat Speak is so expansive, we have a lot of material, I will totally cater to the room.
Yeah.
So in a place like Hamilton Studios in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, like, I'm going to dig into the like ethereal and like really lean into the soundscapey, let's melt into our seat vibe, because we're in that room. But if I play like Eichhardt's up in Sandpoint, which is kind of like a lively pub, it's like I'll lean into all of our like gypsy jazz type sounds, and there's times where people are totally just grooving out and dancing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like the pushback there. That's not the only reason. And so if I kind of dig one layer further, I'm like, well, why am I attracted to this? I think it has to do with the sound palette.
Yeah.
It's like the potential for sound, like the highest sparkly high and the lowest gnarliest low are available to me. So this palette of sound that the digital allows for is like you take a piano, 88 keys, and you get like the lowest and the highest, and then the digital realm just goes like, just like pushes past. So that like palette to play from as just like a sonic thinker is just so fascinating to me.
Yeah, and it also allows you to do, like I mentioned, that Train is very much a headphone heavy song. It's something that you want to listen to because there's all this nuance, and I think that's maybe you can capture it. It's not as if it's inaccessible with standard instrumentation, but you can capture it in different ways and capture, as you mentioned, that sound palette a little bit differently with the digital, and make that headphone experience really rewarding. Yeah.
And also, what I am sort of bringing into it that I love is that acoustic, like, entry point. So if I look at a lot of the sort of digital artists, if you will, like, in the dance project, electronic kind of world, it's like there's a lot of them that are just solely that. And there's not a track yet that I've explored that I'm not adding, a cabasa and like maybe a little piano chord and shakers, and like I'm bringing as much analog acoustic into it for that sort of creative space, just like it makes it really interesting to me. So that mashup is important to me. I'm never going to be just like a laptop tinkering. I can't just like spend all my days working with electronics like that. Like I need like tangible objects. So I do play like synths and like analog keyboards in that context, because it's just I'm still playing an instrument and that feels right to me.
Yeah, and I don't want to neglect the wordplay either, because I've always found you can be very strong on the musical end and then completely fall short on the lyrical side. But with the lyrical side, I've found your lyrics to be thoughtful, to be very playful, and I think that's one of the things that has consistently appealed to me, is just the playfulness of your lyrics and going for rapid fire alliteration and things like that, and just messing with them. To me, it's almost like strings of non sequiturs that just sound really good together. So it's almost using language as another instrument. Can you talk about how we've talked a bit about how the music arises. Can you talk about the lyrical process as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the lyrical process is definitely its own stream of creativity for me. I spend a lot of time just writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say at this point, probably, 80 or 90% of the songs I create lyrically are starting on a page alone without any instruments around me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I spend a lot of time just writing poetry, writing thoughts, writing ideas. And that becomes like my toolbox for writing songs. There are times I'm playing an instrument and I get some lyrical ideas right in the spot.
Yeah, a little piano, to get you going, or a little acoustic guitar to get you going. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, a lyric will land that's like not from my brain. It's more like responsive to the music.
Mm-hmm.
But that's often then like a springboard for me to like go sit down and write. And I'll get a bunch of material, and I can bring that back to the instrument and start to like build a cadence with the material that's in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's, a lot of the material I've written, and sometimes it's just a few pieces that then totally wind somewhere else. But I spend a lot of time and enjoy just writing.
That's cool. And all of this kind of takes place within the context of this patronage model that you have adopted. And so this is the, I don't know, maybe unfun side of art. Or we talked about practicality and solar power, and here there's the practicality of finding some way to make this all sustainable. And I know that you have adopted and been a big proponent of the patronage system, where folks can subscribe on kind of a long-term basis to help you keep doing what you're doing. Can you talk about some of the mechanics of the patronage model and some of the ways that it's worked, and some of the ways that and not just worked, but worked relative to the more transactional model that we tend to have had for quite a long time in the arts, and then also maybe some of the ways that it needs to be improved, or the way that it might be falling short.
Yeah, it's a fascinating concept and not a new one. Mm-hmm. It's like making a resurgence perhaps, but the concept of patronizing, or how patronage for artists goes way back.
It does, but it was a different model then, because usually you had an extremely wealthy benefactor saying, "Here, Michelangelo, you can do what you'd like to do. I'm gonna fund that." Mm-hmm. Whereas this is more of a crowdsource style patronage, where ideally it's nice to get some of the larger benefactors, mm-hmm. but you're asking folks with maybe more moderate incomes to help sustain that.
Yeah. And in a perfect world, that contribution is a reflection of their wealth. Mm-hmm. So that would be, in my perfect world, it's like you're supporting the project in any way you can. And so for my patronage, I have a donation-based pay. Mm-hmm. And so there are people who pay zero, but get all the benefits. And I'm just trusting that that's their lifestyle. And there's a lot of people in my community who do not prioritize money, myself being one of them. Mm-hmm. And so I recognize the importance of like having access to amazing things for $0, because that is actually a support of that lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So that's an option for me. It's a $0 donation to get all the perks of being a patron. And then I also trust that for people who either have the privilege of lots of money or have made that choice, and that's, a big part of who they are, that's important. That's just as important. And it's about if you're aligned with that or not. And I would hope that those people would contribute a lot, relative to their income. So the question of like how it succeeds well for me is definitely like a philosophical one. So I just don't resonate with the concept of buying and selling art in the transactional way that you speak to. It's like this is more of a sacred offering than a capitalist offering. And so it's always felt unaligned to price it, promote it in that with that language. And that's always like a rub for me. It just feels wrong. And meanwhile, the gift economy is just such a beautiful, resonant way to be in the world. And so I see patronage as a little bit of that, where it's like you're not getting anything in particular. You're giving to the belief of my pursuit as a creative person. And then I'm going to give you things as I create them.
Yeah, I mean, but CDs don't print themselves. And so there are hard costs that are associated with distributing this art and making this art available to folks. I mean, even something as simple as you say, okay, I'm going to go all digital and just offer it. Even website hosting costs money. So there are, again, those practical concerns that patronage, even the patronage model, should help fund. Do you feel as though there is an appreciation on the part of your patrons for those, just even basic costs that are associated with getting your art out?
I would like to say yes, but I think my answer is no. I think people don't know how much back-end finances are required to create material. Especially if you are like myself valuing tangibility.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to release things digital, and I try as much as I can to create objects that people can hold and feel, which just ups the costs exponentially. So I'm like looking through my patronage list at the moment, and the people who I'm like close to, like the friends and family category, I think would say yes, because they're seeing me as a human in that context. The people who are a little more peripheral, who are like supporting as a fan, maybe they are aware, but I think it's more, this is what I'm offering, and they want to support, and so they do it. But if I was offering a CD, they would probably just buy it,
And I feel as though it's not as if fandom hasn't existed even with a more transactional model. But it seems to me that the patronage model would establish maybe a closer tie between you. I mean, you've spoken several times about your audience as a community. Do you find that the patronage model creates maybe a more intimate or more personal connection with the people who appreciate what you're doing?
Yeah, I think absolutely. And it's depending on how you engage with it as an artist. So I've made an effort to like have a newsletter of sorts that go out to that community,
which I find to be, I so much in admiration of how regularly you get that newsletter out, how candid they are and forthcoming they are about describing the genesis of a piece and what occasioned it, and then the level of detail that's in them. So seriously, kudos from someone who gets the newsletters and appreciates them. I think you're knocking it out of the park on that front.
Oh, that's great. That's really nice to hear. Sometimes it's like, we have our expectations that don't feel as strong. So I'm really glad that you enjoy them.
And it goes off into the ether and you're like, how is this being received? Well, yeah, you have at least one person, I can guarantee you that, who gets them and says, I am so glad Dario took the time to write all this and then kept me abreast of what he's doing. So yeah.
Oh, great. That's encouraging. Thanks.
But yeah, it seems like the patronage model lends itself a little more to that, because it's not as if, again, even in the transactional economy, your people still release newsletters, but it just seems that if you've kind of if you as a listener have made your ascent to kind of be a part of this community or join it in that regard, there's that slightly tighter connection and slightly tighter bond to the artists themselves.
Yeah, and to your kind of second point of the question of like, where does it fall short? The first thing that comes to mind when I hear that is the kind of gatekeeping of social media and streaming services and these other sort of competitors to the patronage model, if you will. Like if I try to imagine them as entities, it's like social media is trying to absorb whatever energy I might put out in that way and have it funneled in their platform. Streaming services just want it to be available. And what I find difficult is managing both of those spaces. So there's times where it's like...
And can you speak specifically about ways that social media is kind of wanting to subsume this?
In that they have the illusion of so much access, like everybody's on there, versus my mailing list, there's not that many people on there, right? So like the comparison of like sending my energy out, like I know that when I send a newsletter out, it is met with love and that people are consuming it honestly. Like I just know that. And so it's like really rewarding. Social media, no, I don't know that. And in my engagement with social media as a consumer, I know that I pass by someone's most important life-changing moment just in a little swipe. I'm just like, whatever, next thing. But I can like internalize like, no, that's someone's like very big deal, right? And I've just not taken the time.
And there's also this kind of slacktivist component where someone will heart what you've done, and then that's the extent of their engagement. When it would actually mean a lot more if they were to turn up to a show or they were to put $1 or $2 towards the latest single. Yeah,
absolutely. And I can just feel on the receiving end how different those things are. If someone responds to newsletter, it's like there's such a connection there. If someone donates to a single, there's such a connection there. I can feel that transaction as love. It's like, oh, you were actually like appreciating and loving this offering. And I never get that feeling in social media. Like, yes, it'll be a nice comment. And there's something about the way that it just like absorbs our attention that doesn't feel authentic. And yet it's so hard to just like not engage those spaces. Like I've thought so many times about how I can remove myself from those spaces because they don't really align. Yeah. And it's just not feasible.
Yeah, it very much feels like a necessary evil. And and you want to meet people where they're at, but also it's you're someone who certainly takes a very principled approach and thoughtful and philosophical approach to these things. And I don't see how you can take a thoughtful approach to social media and always feel good about it. It's almost like you have to put it to one side and say, okay, this is advancing this or helping folks get the word out about this. But it's yeah.
And in terms of patronage too, there's like, how do you gain new patrons? That's been a challenge for me. Because like, yes, I could dabble in those spaces, social media spaces, and try to promote patronage, but it is kind of like not part of that flow. And meanwhile, there's just like not a lot of other ways to get out the word.
Yeah. And then you find yourself in competition because ideally patronage is something that will become or look a little bit more like a subscription model, because it's nice to have regular income, even if it's small, even if it's $1 a month or $2 a month or whatever. It's nice to know that that's coming in, and that's the sustained investment in your creative output. And there's another artist in town. You've probably met Olivia Brownlee, who has been an advocate and adopted the patronage model very early on, and is someone much like you who's extremely prolific, extremely curious, extremely creative, extremely principled and thoughtful, and has adopted this model as well. And again, she will be the first to admit that it's not without some of its shortcomings, but it does create that tighter bond with fans or listeners. But what you find is that it almost exists in competition with the streaming services, because then as they up their fees, and you're like, man, now I have a limited amount of disposable income, and I can either have access to Dario's music, or I can have access to all of Spotify's music. And when you're getting into that, those nickels and dimes, then the streaming services and the subscription models there end up kind of existing in competition with the patronage model.
Exactly.
So,
especially if I am putting my music on Spotify, for instance, which I am.
Yeah.
So it's like
Another necessary evil.
Yeah. So it's like, whoa, I'm like doing the thing I don't want to be doing,
Yeah.
And it's in competition to what I am doing.
Yeah.
It's complex and very interesting.
Yeah. What ways do you see the patronage model for you evolving? And do you have any plans to make any tweaks or any adjustments to that model? In order to improve it for you in the near future or even longer term.
I can't say I do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the way it's operating right now is very helpful, and I like the community aspect of it. Mm-hmm. And I'm more focused on my creative output and just trying to trust that it's going to follow. There's a lot of trust in being an artist.
Yeah.
Just commit to the work, keep doing it, and trust that the support will be there. That's kind of the approach I take. So I do the basics to get supported. And if there's something, really worth promoting, I'll put some extra energy into that. But in a perfect world, I would outsource that to someone who's better at it than me. Yeah. It's not like a good use of my energy.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just kind of manage it as I can.
Cool. Well, thank you for indulging me on the patronage model, because I think it's an important topic. And as I just had someone on last week's episode who was an artist who was just starting out and was talking about some of the economic considerations. And, it's helpful for people to keep this in mind and say, hey, maybe this offers a viable alternative or maybe a supplement to some of the existing models of creative funding. So, yeah. Now that you've indulged me in the patronage discussion, I'm hoping that you will indulge me in what comes next, and that is kind of the post-interview lightning round. Okay?
Lightning round, sure.
Awesome. Fantastic. So you are both a...
Lightning meaning I just respond quickly?
You can respond quickly. It's a little bit of a misnomer because sometimes with the lightning round questions, the answers are fairly long, and people invest a lot of thought into that, and I appreciate that. It's more that the questions kind of come out of nowhere. So these questions have nothing to do necessarily with your career or anything that we've covered. They are for random questions that are going to kind of tease out a little bit more about Dario. The first one is always an either or. Okay, so this is an either or choice, and I guess this is where lightning enters into it. I know that you are both literary minded and both music minded, and so you have to make a choice here between a fantastic playlist or a fantastic book.
Oh, I like it. I mean, I have sort of a quick answer, which is book.
All right.
Only because I don't listen to playlists. So if you would have said like a great album, I might have had a harder time.
Okay.
But I just don't listen to playlists. So if it's truly a playlist, then it's just obvious book to me.
Okay.
But I'm going to change it to album because I think that's a more challenging.
Oh, I want you to be challenged then.
Yeah.
So let me rephrase the either or. Now we have an album or a book.
Yeah. That's tougher. That's way tougher. It's probably album.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, now that I changed it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is your basis for that? Is it? I'm curious as to your rationale for sitting down with a great album, or sitting down to enjoy a great album, or sitting down to enjoy a great book.
It's my consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So a great book is still in my head. Like I'll feel things, of course, but I'm like tickling my brain.
I see.
And
so
that space is fun, but it's a little bit more limiting. Sitting down with a great album or laying down with a great album, even better. It's like I get to just travel the cosmos. And I come out feeling so inspired and I can feel myself in those moments, and it's like it can just change my whole world. And I'm like getting shivers just talking about it. Like a great album that you're just like soaking up is just, there's nothing better. And a great book, I get inspired, sure, but it's like a little more brainy.
Yeah, yeah.
For my being.
So the cerebral versus the visceral, and you're kind of going for the visceral, or visceral / spiritual.
Yep.
Okay.
/ maybe even like heart-based, I would say.
Okay.
Like a heart experience can come from a great album. Maybe a great poem. I've had some heart experiences, but reading books tends to be more brainy for me.
Okay. So yeah, either or, and we'll go with a great album. Excellent. This is actually somewhat pertinent, and I had included this question for this reason, but you talked about Christmas and how much you enjoy Christmas. So this question is, what holiday tradition do you wish you could do every single day?
Ooh, love that question. Holiday tradition every single day. Is it just me, or is it like my community and all of us?
I'll open that up to you. Okay. So yeah. Go with what you like.
I have an obvious answer if it's community.
Okay.
Which is Halloween.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The way that people express themselves on Halloween, and we throw a Halloween party, and we have for years, and it's like our flagship event for sure. We put everything into that, and the way that people show up and express themselves and are creative with like their identities. Mm-hmm. Like if I try to imagine that projected onto like every day, how creative and expressive our world would be, just sounds brilliant. So that's a no-brainer. And I feel like I, as an individual, already kind of live Halloween every day in some ways. And so that's not as like necessary. Okay. So I'd have to dig deeper if it's for me. But if it's community, Halloween.
Okay, excellent. I did think you would say something more Christmas themed. So again, this is the advantage of the lightning round, is because we learn your affinity for Halloween. This is a fairly standard one, but I'm curious, the person you most admire.
The person I most admire.
Mm. And that can be a relative. That could be an artist. That can be, a musician.
Mm-hmm. Huh. Most admire.
Or, so as not to play favorites, if you're worried about somebody saying, well, I thought he admired me, you could also do someone within that pantheon of folks you admire. Mm-hmm. So if you want to pick someone out from there that you think would be relevant.
Yeah. Huh. It's a tough one. I'm just going to answer, candidly.
Go for it.
I think like admiration for me is like everybody. Like I just love the way people show up. And so I admire anyone who's showing up with intention and like bringing their true self to the table. Mm-hmm. And I feel lucky to be surrounded by tons of people who I feel are doing that. So it's like I see admiration here and admiration. It's like I admire everyone in my community for the way they show up.
Okay.
It's a hard one to just go like that person is everything
So it's more rather than an individual person, it's more a trait. Someone who does show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do definitely admire that about a person.
Yeah.
Is if they're really like embodying, a resonant version of themselves. And it's kind of a subjective concept, but you know when you see it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are doing it, and I'm proud of them, and that's really admirable to me.
Cool. I like people who show up as well. So. All right, last one. Because the thing is, I know that you are a disc golf player. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm thinking about a piece, either a rule or a piece of advice from the world of disc golf that is transferable to life advice. So cool. Give me a rule or something or a maxim from disc golf that doubles as a really good piece of life advice.
Well, visualization comes to mind.
Okay.
Like one of the key traits in disc golf is being able to visualize your line. And the beauty of these Frisbees is that they can do anything you want. Like you can manipulate them to start out left, flatten out, bend right, and then finish left at the end. And sometimes the fairway is carved just that way. Mm-hmm. So you really have to like have a disc selection, get your execution figured out, and really set your line. And that like ability to visualize an event before it's happened and then like manifest it translates to all kinds of stuff I do in my world.
So set your line is a phrase that you think is transferable. You know,
Visualize the line.
Visualize the line. Visualize the line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I think I'm going to employ that at some point. You know, visualize the line. Cool. Dario, thank you so much for coming in today and talking about your solo music, talking about HeatSpeak. At a certain point, I would love to have you back on to talk about your visual art, because I understand you've got an Entropy show coming up in June, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, wow. So that's another component that we can delve into. But yeah, thank you so much for coming in today and talking about this.
Yeah, you're very welcome, EJ. It's been fun to chat. So thanks for having me on.
Cool.